Welcome to the Young Kings podcast. This is a podcast where we're looking at pertinent issues that are pertinent to society and social functioning in order to help our young kings, our young males, to be able to move through society successfully, strategically to their advantage in a knowledgeable way that's going to benefit them and is going to benefit them in their private lives, socially, in their careers. And so what I want to touch on this week is a podcast from $1 Million Worth of Game with Wallow and Gilly the Kid. And they had as their guest rapper Camron from the Diplomats. And Camron was talking about something very powerful. And what he was talking about was the fact that there are no rich people in the ghetto. And so essentially what that means is that nobody out of choice wants to be there. Nobody out of choice wants to be in the hood, because there's no rich people there. It's a place strictly for the impoverished, for the people who have no other choice, people who are at the wrong end of the socio-economic spectrum within capitalist society that reside at the bottom of that socio-economic structure, okay? And that disproportionately is people of colour and predominantly black people from across the diasporic spectrum. And so that was the discussion that Camron was having, that there's no rich people in the hood. And he was telling a story about being at some sort of event and there was a female there. And I think there was a fan or somebody that got a bit too close to him. And that female thought that, in terms of ghetto rules, in terms of ghetto commandments or rules or structure, that really Camron should have checked him. That Camron should have checked this guy. In terms of hood rules and foolishness, essentially, Camron should have checked him if he was a real guy in terms of ghetto rules, which are nonsense. And she was checking Camron on, how are you going to let this guy be all up in your space? When in reality, the guy posed no threat to him. There was no threat of violence. There was no threat of anything negative happening to Camron. It was strictly just an image thing based on these arbitrary hood rules that one needs to adhere to in terms of social visibility and being someone, in terms of badness and badmanism within the hood or the ghetto. Foolishness. And so Camron was talking about that, the expectations of this female in terms of, what she expected from him. And so Camron broke down that he thought about it and he thought, 10 years ago when I was in the hood, when I was broke, when I was struggling for resources, when I was in that ghetto mentality, I probably would have listened to this girl and let this girl's words get into the head, because I would have been so angry. I would have been so angry in terms of the headspace, being impoverished, being in the hood, not having social visibility, being excluded from, society's norms and values, being a nobody, being the demonized, worthless black savage, which has been demarcated, a position that's been demarcated for me by the ruling classes of Eurocentric society. I would have been in that angry mode from being at the bottom of a political game that I've been put in, that I would have probably engaged in that narrative that this girl was pushing. I would have let her, put these demons in my head and ended up, in a violent altercation with this guy quite unnecessarily. And furthermore, this brings me back to a different situation that's almost identical to this one. And it was a story that my close friend from school was telling me about in terms of some guys from back in the day in Southeast London. And these guys, I knew the guys, I know the main protagonist, in the situation. And they were in a bar and a guy accidentally knocked over the drink of this guy that was in badman mode. And the guy who knocked over the drink was very apologetic. Sorry, listen, can I buy you another drink? I'm so sorry to have knocked over your your drink. Please, can I buy you another drink? Very apologetic. Posed no threat at all, was not involved in gangster road cultural ethics or anything like that. He was a 9-to-5 civilian guy and was extremely apologetic, no bad vibes, clearly didn't have any bad intention. The guy was an ordinary guy. What did the guy from the hood, Southeast London, do, who was in that bad man mode? Started putting on black gloves. Started gloving himself up as if he was going to put on the gloves, grab the strap and murk off this 9-to-5. It's ridiculous. And my friend who was, socialising in the proximity just said, this is ridiculous, I'm going home. Because people are starting to put on black gloves unnecessarily. And it's this whole needing to act out this bad man, strong man image that's going to put you at a deficit. You're going to put on black gloves or attack this guy, fatally wound him for the sake of visual aesthetics, so that you can be seen as adhering to these hood rules that are going to put you in a negative situation, that are retrograde, have you moving away from your natural self and doing what is right and that is going to be positive and progressive, not just for you, but for your family and friends. Because you're adhering to this social narrative of social visibility in terms of antagonistic relations, where you're going to be seen as a strong man or you're going to be seen as badder than the baddest in order to have social visibility. And it's an absolute nonsense. And the two stories, the same social conventions are exactly the same in Camron's case and in the story that I've just mentioned. And it's absolute nonsense. And it's retrograde because you're going against the grain. You're going against yourself. You're going backwards. That's retrograde. When you're moving backwards, you're not in a progressive state of kinetic energy where you're moving forward. You're in this retrograde negative situation where you're moving backwards. You're self-contradictory. Yeah, you're in this myopic, very short-sighted state of being that's going to disadvantage you in the long term, and you're moving away. You're not progressive in any way, and so this is really a trick that's been set up for you by those who are at the top of the socio-economic order that have coded your blackness as you being negative or bad or being adverse to positivity in this political game, so that you are disadvantaged. Okay, you reside at the bottom of the socio-economic structure, unable to challenge those at the top, so that the top remain there. And so you remain there because you're at war with one another. You're within this antagonistic ghetto situation where you're wrestling for resources and you're wrestling for status, because you have been excluded from a Eurocentric society that doesn't much care for you and that has created a political narrative where you are seen as nothing, dirt, dust on the bottom of the shoes of the Eurocentric victors of society. And so you need to do everything that you can in order to salvage some sort of humanity on Eurocentric terms, but not on Afrocentric terms, on Eurocentric terms, because we are enslaved to Eurocentric norms and values. And once we embrace that negative narrative of ourselves, that then propels us into this retrograde dimension, where we need to do everything that we can in order to appease those at the top of society to prove that we're worth something. But it's on Eurocentric terms though. Okay? And that can never be achieved, because we can never be white, really. And essentially that's what we're trying to do. Either to prove that we are the baddest of the baddest, which is a Eurocentric narrative that keeps us wrestling with ourselves so that we can never progress to the top of society to challenge those at the top, and in order to change social norms and values, which is the ultimate, which should be our ultimate objective. Instead, we wrestle with one another at the bottom, which is what those at the top want us to do. And so the lyrics and the whole popular cultural movement, black popular cultural retrograde movement, is one of fighting with one another, being bad men, having more than our black brothers, having more, being able to show off and show off that we've got more than our black brothers who are struggling at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder. So we are in a competition that is a non-competition, if that makes sense. We're in a competition with ourselves that doesn't matter in reality. But within this ghetto, myopic, short-sighted situation, we're in this competition to prove that we're better than our black brothers so that we can show off that we are higher up the Eurocentric ladder of humanity than our black brothers. That's all we're out to prove, that we are better, we are more Eurocentric, so successful with in a Eurocentric way than our black brothers. And that competition stops us from actually wanting to be at the top of the socio-economic order and actually create a situation where Afrocentricity has value and has status and is being treated with respect and is being treated seriously. And that is who we are naturally. And so we end up in this game where we need to prove and be in this retrograde situation where we want to stab one another to have status and beat one another up and wipe one another out and be, embroiled in this black on black drama, which keeps us at the bottom. And that's why it's retrograde, because you're going against the grain of yourself and who you are in terms of Afrocentric norms and values. You're chasing the dragon, you're chasing an illusion that can never, or a delusion that can never be obtained. And so that is powerful, what Camron is saying. Because what he's saying is that in terms of our natural selves, we do not embrace that. And since he's made it to the top, since he's made it out of the ghetto, he's socially secure, and he's in a situation now where he can embrace his natural Afrocentric norms and values of peace, love and unity, which is our nature. And it is known that we are inherently peaceful, ironically. Because those at the top, the ruling classes, the royal family included, everybody at the top of society, the top, executive office, the Prime Minister, those at the top, those in Parliament, those in Whitehall, at the top, the gatekeepers that control society know that we are inherently peaceful. It is our inherently peaceful nature which allowed us to be outmaneuvered by our European oppressors and allowed them to cause havoc in Africa and to wash us to the Western shores in order to wrestle for the crumbs that had been left behind by empire and by other oppressive regimes, Eurocentric regimes. So it is known by the gatekeepers that control European society that we are inherently peaceful. And that was one of the things that was seen as negative by European society, that we were inherently peaceful, that we were savages because we were inherently peaceful. Oh, these people can be taken over because they're naturally peaceful people that are welcoming, that are kind and that are peaceful. So there's a paradox there. There's something not right there. There's a contradiction, there's tension there in terms of the narrative that's being pushed. Because on one hand, it is acknowledged that our nature is peaceful and that we are good people, kind, generous, peaceful. We are inherently peaceful as Africans, and that this is known throughout the ruling classes, throughout the top of, European society, the structures, the gatekeepers that control society. And so this political game that has been created is one where we have been put at the bottom of the socio-economic order, and we have been pointed to as monsters, as monsters, as the bad guys. They need someone, the ruling classes of society need to point their finger at someone and call them the bad guy, and we're it, in order for them to reside at the top. Because ultimately, they would be seen as evil, and their true nature would be revealed if it was revealed that we were human beings, civilized, who created modern civilization, who had been oppressed and outmaneuvered and put at the bottom of the economic spectrum for the privilege to privilege Europeans. Okay, and it would be highlighted the true nature of Eurocentric oppression as wicked, evil, and unjust would be revealed if our true nature were revealed as peaceful and as civilized people who once were in control of planet Earth and introduced modern civilization to the planet. Thank you. That can't be revealed. Our history has to be obfuscated. Okay? Our history has to be hidden, removed, burned, pillaged, which is what it has been done over the years. Okay? The origins of African society and the cornerstones of African society, okay, science, mathematics, history, religion, all of the cornerstones that were created, okay, by African pioneers, African civilization, the Afrocentric roots of that situation have been obfuscated, have been removed. But let's not get too much into that. That's the basis of it. The political game is as it is. We've been put at the bottom. Eurocentric society, the gatekeepers need someone to point their fingers to, because otherwise they would be revealed as the monsters that they are in terms of the oppression of Africans and putting us at the bottom of the socio-economic structure. So the narrative is that we are monsters, bad men, savages, thieves, monsters, gangsters, who are no good, which is an absolute nonsense. So essentially what we're saying in terms of the Camron situation is that we are naturally inherently peaceful, and we need to embrace our natural Afrocentric peaceful nature in order that we can form unity with one another, become a force in terms of our cultural cohesion, in terms of trying to rebuild African civilization on our terms, so that we can have some control over our destiny, have some control over our economic resources, and get ourselves together as a people and as a civilization and prosper in the right way. Cohesion is the only strength. It is the only thing that commands strength and respect. And without cohesion and unity, we are nothing. We are jokers at the bottom of the pack. Thank you. Young kings, be aware, educate yourself, unity, cohesion, not this retrograde situation of embracing Eurocentric norms and values of individualism. That leads and can only lead to disaster wherever we look. That is post-traumatic stress disorder. That is death, violence, war, misery. Okay? That's what that leads to. That's misery. And we don't want that. That's retrograde. We need to embrace our Afrocentric nature of peace, love, and unity. Thank you. God bless and good night.